My biggest fear would be when the first comes and I don't get the rent.
I found that my tenant had dumped concrete down my toilet.
Can you believe Fair Housing fined me $5,000 for that?
How do you onboard your tenants? What do you do?
I don't even know if I do it right.
If you're a landlord, don't just rent, rent perfect. The Rent Perfect podcast with property expert and private investigator, David Pickron.
Well, hello. How are you doing today? We're glad you're here joining us. We're grateful here to have Scott Aubrey, my sidekick all the time. Scotty, before we kind of just started this podcast, you and I were having a little conversations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we like to go to this throwback. Like, I don't know if that was our glory years
Right.
or, old songs, old commercials we constantly bring up. But you brought up an old television show that I loved. And tell me.
So I loved the Andy Griffith Show.
Okay.
I really did. I loved watching that as a kid.
I wish I could whistle. Like,
Yeah, right. But I always thought it was just so fun. I mean, little Opie's out, fishing and with his dad, and they're hanging out together. But as you looked at that show, I just thought it was so funny because you had Sheriff Andy, who was kind of this stern Southern gentleman. You had Aunt Bee, who was in everybody's business,
right?
And you had Barney Fife, who's probably my favorite character on the show, and just kind of that goofy deputy. But one of the things, I think Otis was the town drunk, and he was always coming in and out of the jail.
He'd check himself in. Yeah.
Right, yeah, he'd check himself in sometimes, right? But it was such this idyllic little setting where, and it still carries on today. People, when they talk about the perfect little town, they talk about Mayberry.
Right.
And the thing about Mayberry is the minute somebody new came into town, everybody knew it.
Like, not even into town. Like, they stepped off the bus.
First step off the bus, yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, that small town, every
stranger?
business owner's looking out the window when the bus pulls into town, and they're like, well, what's, is trouble rolling in?
Right.
And so I love that show, and there's so many. This is just an aside, but if you ever want to teach your kids something, go watch an episode of Andy Griffith together. There are so many little moral lessons within each episode, but it does take me back to this beauty of the small town.
Yeah, how many people were in Mayberry? I mean, like 3?
We saw about 10 characters, right? You got the guy that's fixing, you got Goober fixing trucks, and you got Otis the drunk, and it's a small town, but it's there was some beauty in that little small, perfect little setting.
Yeah, so my wife grew up in Montana, and I'm a native Arizonan, but I feel like I have Montana roots. Been married 26 years.
Yeah.
Yesterday, by the way.
Oh, congratulations!
So, yeah, it's a big day. But anyways, love to feel like I'm from Montana because all I've ever known is just hot Arizona.
Right.
Now I only go to Montana from June to August. I was there Labor Day weekend, one weekend, and it snowed. It was too cold for me. And lizards just don't do well.
Right.
I'm cold-blooded.
Cold weather.
Yeah, exactly. But we're up in Dillon, Montana. One little trip here a few years back, and
population
5,000.
Okay,
a little bigger than Mayberry, but still today's Mayberry.
Yeah,
right. Still has the bus come through town.
Right.
Love little Dillon, Montana. Great little fishing, hunting spot, if you guys know where that is. But I'm in the Safeway there, and we're looking to get some groceries to grill some dinner up. And my wife kind of nudges me on the shoulder and kind of lowers her voice, and I know there's something important coming. Right. And she says, I see that guy right there. I'm like, yeah, that 60-year-old gray-headed guy that's kind of limping a little bit. She's like, yeah, he got 3 girls pregnant in high school, and he's a drunk. And I'm like, okay, and that does what for me?
That impacts me how?
I could care less. I'm sure every person down every aisle has a story. Life is tough. We have stories in our life, right? And you dig deep enough, you're going to find stories about everybody. But for some reason, she felt like she wanted to point that out. Now, I will defend my wife in all. She's not really a gossiper. She's not really. But I thought it was interesting that this guy wasn't even her generation. So it wasn't like she went to high school with him.
Mm-hmm.
But his reputation got passed down from her parents to her, right? And she's going to kill me when she hears this, by the way, because she's going to say, you make me look bad. But the whole point is just like Mayberry, what you talked about, is in small towns, people know things that we don't know in big towns. Mm-hmm. And her grandpa was going to rent the next home on his very same lot. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, Grandpa, this is what I do for a living, and, all this stuff. And so make sure before you commit to anything that you run this. Son, I know this family, gives me we do handshake deals and whatever. And after listening to him and all that he knew about the person, I was probably like, yeah, you're right. You probably have more information than what I could give you statistically on
Right.
paper on credits and evictions and criminal. You're probably in good
Yeah.
shape, Grandpa.
I'm going to
Right.
call this generational background screening.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
In that
100%. And
Yeah.
so, renting in Dillon, Montana, population 5,000, is completely, totally different than renting in Phoenix, Arizona, where you have 5 to 8 million people in the metro area, right? And so, if you know this person lived in Dillon their whole life, and then you can search Dillon. But here's the fact: is these big cities, people are moving. They're moving in. They're moving out. They're escaping
Mm-hmm.
their history.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you lived in Dillon, Montana, and you robbed the bank when you were 18 years old, you probably have to leave that community because that's what you're going to be known
Right.
for, right?
Yep.
But you rob a bank in Phoenix, and unless you read the news story or watch TV at night, you're never even going to know.
Yeah. The news cycle has you washed out the next day for
You're-
the next guy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But Scott, why do you think we should run background checks on people nationwide? Because I'll get a lot of calls saying, "Hey, listen, should I just run Arizona?"
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, statistically, we know that of people that are released from prison, 1 in 6, so 16%, leave the state that they were incarcerated in. And so it's not like they're just sitting around waiting to, in their same community. A lot of these guys are running.
Right.
And they're running for, a multitude of reasons. Number one probably is just to get away from, if they're in a community, right?
A
Get
fresh
away
new
from it.
start,
Yeah,
right? Let's
right.
get a fresh new start.
Right. But the savvy criminal, because we see this all the time. We have a employment screening business as well. And so we see thousands and thousands of backgrounds, every month. And what we see a lot of times is individuals are leaving states that have restrictive criminal
They're hard
reporting.
on crime.
Right. Hard on crime, to states that might be a little less restrictive, might be a
Exactly.
little more lenient, a little more criminal friendly.
Right.
I mean, just to come to mind, there's a couple states in the United States that have limited reporting rules where you can only go back 7 years.
Okay, so California is one of
California, New York. So so those areas where, hey, I have something from 10 years ago. If I live in Illinois, it's going to get reported, right? But if I move to California, it can't be used against me in housing, in employment.
them. Right.
So I'm getting a new start, but it's kind of.
And if it is used against me over 7 years in California, I'm getting paid because I'm going to an attorney.
Yeah, I'm getting a $10,000 check.
And you broke the law. And
Yep.
so a lot of people will say, "Hey, we're moving to California so I can make that criminal history, disappear."
Yeah.
And so different states operate differently. I've been watching Colorado a bit, and we talked about Colorado on the last podcast a little bit, but when they first came out and made marijuana legal recreationally, who do you think moved to Colorado?
Yeah.
Right?
Potheads. No. I mean, users, right? Marijuana users move there because now it's like, oh, this is
Right.
yeah. And as Colorado, you open your doors to that.
Yeah.
And whether the lawmaker looked at it or not, you've opened your doors to that.
You've completely opened your doors to them. So it's so important to know we're a nation where people are just moving. Some of them fresh starts, some of them are escaping. Everyone has their own story, but a criminal background check nationwide is absolutely critical. Just staying locally does not cut it anymore. And I really want to push, you need to have a PI. You really need to have a private investigator help you with these. I mean, there's all these instant databases. I know Zillow, SmartMove, they all have these instant databases. When you get back a no record found out of those instant databases, really all they're saying is we don't have a record of anything. It doesn't say that doesn't exist. And a PI can dig a little deeper. We have tools where we can find out whether they lived in Dillon, Montana, or they lived in Pennsylvania or Florida, and then we go looking deeply into those courts to get you that record. Remember, any information that we can get you helps you make a great decision on a future applicant so you can make money and have a very good business relationship.
So, yep.
That's what we want. Let's look at the past, make great business decisions, and part of that is having a nationwide criminal history. I want to rent in Mayberry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know the sheriff. I want to know I'm protected. I want to know I'm safe. I want to know when someone walks into my property to see it, it's almost like they're getting off the bus stop in Mayberry because I can control the four corners of my property. So think of our houses or our apartments or whatever rental units we have. That's our Mayberry. We need to know everything that is going on in our asset to protect ourselves. So I love that show, and I think we can all have our own little Mayberry in our lives.
Yeah. Do things right, you have your own Mayberry. I love that. That's a great.
Can you whistle heading out of the show or
No, not today.
I don't even know. So until next time, I appreciate that. Please forgive me for that. And until next time, continue to rent perfect.